Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Johnson Financial Group, helping customers build financial plans around their unique goals for over 55 years. More at johnsonfinancialgroup.com. Johnson Bank and Johnson Wealth Inc. are Johnson Financial Group companies.
You're listening to Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR station. Here's one of our favorite conversations about what's happening in the city.
This Sunday is International Women's Day, and to celebrate, we've passed the mic to two organizers from Milwaukee's International Women's Day Coalition. For this month's group chat, Kayla Patterson and KJ Johnson talk about what womanhood means to them and why the fight for reproductive justice continues. They also highlight the events the coalition has planned for this International Women's Day weekend.
To you, what does it mean to be a woman?
Means to be, heard, present. I guess more heavy on heard. For me, it really just means being outspoken or not jumping to that kind of gut reaction to shy away that I feel like we're all just kind of since birth, right? They just kind of, they want to make you the dormouse. They want to make you a little bit quieter. But I really do think that in this day and age in the big 2-6, we need to be loud and we need to be proud.
I really resonate with that, especially the part you're saying about being heard. Whenever I think about being a woman in terms of how womanhood was always described to me growing up, it's almost wow, they were really just trying to convince who we are based off of who we are not.
Right.
And I think there's something about voice that is so fundamental to that. Right, because clearly, I don't know, listeners can't hear us, but I'm a white woman, you're a black woman, so it's
yes.
How do you think voice shows up in identity for you as a black woman?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the point of race because I think it's there's an expectation for me to be loud, but in the trashy quote unquote ghetto, that kind of way, not in a coherent worth listening to kind of way. I guess it's being black while being a woman, I guess. So it's you have that double-sided of they're expecting you to be loud, but it's also no, you're still a woman, we expect you to keep your opinions to yourself. So it's it's this weird back and forth. So I can see it sometimes. I don't know, at work I think it's a thing, if I'm having too much fun kind of thing, then it's well, okay guys, get back to work. And it's well, was it everyone? Was it just me? Who was actually not at my current job? Let me be clear before maybe my boss is listening. It's not you.
We love Rocket Bakery.
we love Rocket Baby, guys. No, but just you notice it growing up, and then I think the workplace is one of the places where it becomes clear of what year is it, guys? We're still doing this, that kind of thing.
Would you feel comfortable kind of sharing more about just through your relationship with other women in your life in general, whether that's family or strong friendships you've had, and how do you see solidarity being built within identity, specifically womanhood?
I guess I can start with family. I have a sister, my mom. It was an all girls pretty much household except for my dad. Shout out my dad. But yeah, and then maybe a little bit more towards political side of things. My grandmother, she was an MPS teacher. She's retired now. But before that, in her youth, as an MPS student, she marched with Father Grappi for civil rights. So I think hearing those kind of stories, and again, I don't know, there's a trend of no boys in at least on my mom's side. She has 4 living sisters. So I don't know, just hearing those stories of how they made it through tough times. It's a different kind of girl power when you're on segregated buses. That's something else. And that's the kind of strength that I like to draw on.
And I like what you called out too is this type of solidarity, this type of community, while it is never praised or honored the way it should and often tries to be hidden, it's never been non-existent. I can definitely relate to growing up also in a primary all-women household. My mom, my grandma, my older sister, my great-grandma, all of the women I were around were proud to be a woman and proud of that resilience. And growing up in that environment too, I never learned that I could ever be less than a man. And I think for me that really also showcased how much of this is taught and how much of this is tolerated, even if it's not something that someone is taught. I am curious, speaking more to relationships and solidarity, perception. Did you ever have like a negative view on being like a woman, or do you ever feel like that shows up in spaces of solidarity?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think when people come into organizing like meetings, like regardless of gender, there's like a little bit of intimidation just being in a new space and stuff. But I do see like if they're like a mother or whatnot, they have kids, they're busy. Sometimes they like are a little down on their ability to like be present in the space and like contribute and like, or even feeling shy to like speak at like when we're asking like, oh, who wants to speak at such and such event. I do see sometimes, and I really do try to like just gas up my girls. Like it goes both ways in terms of like they should have the confidence, and we should also work to make the space accommodating for mothers, for especially working women, because it's little things that can add to that like feeling of I can't do this. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate like you bringing that up, because I think like that type of labor is so overlooked in the grassroots organizing scene. Like none of that would happen if there wasn't someone organizing at home. Like if there wasn't someone making sure that like the family was good and that their people were good. And like I bet you see this a lot too with doing like police work with survivors and like victims of police brutality. Like families are always organizing on behalf of their loved ones. And then typically who that person is behind that is often the matriarch of the family that I've seen through my outreach work. Doing caregiving work, I would say like 99% of the people I come in direct contact with are mothers or grandmothers. And so like there is always an act of labor going on. There's always an act of caregiving going on that enables anything else to happen. And it hardly ever gets like acknowledged in the way that it deserves, especially knowing what that catalyzes as a result. Like nothing else could truly happen if there wasn't organizing like in the home.
I don't like the saying because it's like I don't want to prop up a man when I say this, but when people say like behind every great man there's a great woman, like there's a kernel in that, which is that there's this very real invisible labor happening that ladies aren't getting their flowers for, in terms of like the work that goes into levels on levels. Like you kind of peel back the layers and you realize how much was needed to actually bring certain things to fruition. Like homemaking is labor. And it shouldn't be seen as like expected part of being, whatever role, mother, sister, daughter, like whatever. I do want to flip it back, if you don't mind, just because.
Flip it back.
Let's flip it back. Because you working with your work, reproductive education with young girls, that's such a beautiful profession to have. Like, because remembering like myself as like a 12 years old, like that's a scary time. And if you want to, I don't know, do you want to speak to maybe like how that brought you into like maybe the path?
Yeah.
Because
I'm a fierce reproductive justice advocate. And for me, the reason why that is I genuinely do not believe we could achieve any level of sustainable social justice without adequate reproductive justice. Because when we're talking about reproductive justice, we're talking about the quality of life. Yeah. And reproductive justice, the impacts of the lack of it often fall on, people who are assigned female at birth, women, because it is our bodies that are quite literally hidden from us. So if we're talking about like medical neglect that we have experienced, a really, really easy example to offer. So the clitoris is the only human organ designed purely for pleasure. That is its mode of operation, is to provide pleasure. And
shout out
to the clitoris.
Shout out.
We did not have a fully depicted medical model or like diagram of the clitoris until 2006. And it took a woman to do it. But our fallopian tubes were named in like the late 1800s, early 1900s by some French doctor who was a man. And so there is, historically speaking, this ownership over the woman's body that exists in spaces that we may not expect it to. And I think the medical model is an easy model just to point at, because we can see how the neglect of women's health care has led to preventable deaths. We have also seen how the weaponization of women's health care leads to preventable deaths. There's a reason why the infant and maternal mortality rate is as high as it is in the United States, especially for Black women.
Exactly. I do want to shout out you and Reproductive Justice Action Milwaukee in terms of I think a lot of people, like in the city, but also in the state, like because of what you were saying, like that kind of shame narrative and like that, people don't realize like when people say that Wisconsin is like, oh, like one of the better states for abortion, like that's still like a very, very, very low bar. And I think one thing that made that clear is when Planned Parenthood had that like moment of getting their funding cut, because it's like, where can you go now? And we could like count on our hands, like 1, 2, 3, that's it. I think a lot of people don't realize is like the fight for reproductive justice does not end at like when at like the state level there's like a new threat and we beat it, quote unquote. It's always kind of up in the air in Wisconsin, in the country as a whole, but especially in Wisconsin. Like it's understanding that what you're saying, like the deeper work of in the communities, like making this widely accessible, widely as any other kind of healthcare needs to be.
So March 7th and 8th is International Women's Day weekend. March 7th, we are having a vendor market and workshops along with a keynote speaker and poetry performance, followed by a march and rally on March 8th. I'm really excited for this event because I think it is a very unique coming together of community in skill building, skill sharing, uplifting, solidarity. I think there is just so much that is going to be taking place throughout this weekend. What is it that you hope people take away from it?
Definitely the workshop aspect. Like I can sit down in this room, ask all the questions that I need to ask. Like I want people to take like real like notes, even like get the notepad out. Like I think especially like, I don't know, in a time like this, it's scary and I think people want to shrink away, even, you know, on top of the shrinking away that we've been doing, for centuries. Like we can't, shrink down in a moment like this. And I think feeling empowered through these workshops, through these like skills, they range from so many different topics. Like we have a Know Your Rights because ICE terror is very real. I mean, not the same conditions as, Minneapolis, Chicago, LA, but Milwaukee's not an insignificant city in terms of immigrant community, right? So be ready instead of getting ready, when the time comes. And a note on International Women's Day, it's International Working Women's Day. One of our slogans this year is, our demands is end the wage gap. And if I remember correctly, like last year, a lot of people wanted to hear more about women in the workplace, on the shop floor. How do we fight back there? So I think that's a great one, especially right now, like all this crazy stuff going on in the economy. Like, how do you take that power back in terms of your own paycheck? I think that's a huge one that people should be paying attention to. And then yoga. Shout out Parisa. Like, we're thinking about this in a very like mind, body, spirit way. Like, we're trying to make sure that our ladies have like the resources and the skills that they can take out and for the rest of the year, how to be more in tune with themselves as a woman in their community.
Yeah. I think what's so special about this weekend for me is that like the what has been like talked about, right? Like we know what we have to do. What is really cool about this weekend is that it's an opportunity to showcase the how. Like, how do we go about doing this? And we can go about doing it through listening into powerful speakers. We can go about it through gaining new skills we hadn't gained before. We can go about it through uplifting small, local, Black-owned businesses. We can do it by supporting organizations who are doing direct service work. It's a cool opportunity to say, we know what has to be done, and now we have the chance to come together as community and to talk about how we're going to do it.
Oh, yeah. Do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing. Can you put that in there?
Can we cuss?
That was Kayla Patterson and KJ Johnson. They're both organizers for Milwaukee's International Women's Day Coalition. To learn more about the Coalition's weekend events, visit WUWM.com. This episode of Group Chat was produced by WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez and Lake Effect's Excrit Nunez. Group Chat is our monthly segment featuring local voices that aren't typically heard, expressing their own opinions.
That was the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast. It comes from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR station. Lake Effect is WUWM's talk show all about what's happening in the city. If you want to hear more conversations like this, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast, and you'll hear highlights from the show. If you want to hear the full show, it's on the radio at noon, Monday through Friday, on 89.7. That was the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast. It comes from your local NPR station, WUWM. Subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast to hear more great stories about Milwaukee.